I believe the teaching and learning environment is going to change greatly over the upcoming years. And there are three aspects of the teaching and learning environment that I want to focus on for the purpose of this question. Number one, the flipped classroom. When we came out of the pandemic, we had so many teachers that had created so many more tools within their toolbox to send lessons home virtually, to connect the education to the students in that technological world. And unfortunately, so many, not all, but many, came back into the building, and with the number of students that were struggling, the loss of learning, we all pretty much just settled right back into where we were. Lost opportunity. In the future, I think the flipped classroom is going to become the norm and not the exception. I also believe we need to look at flexible scheduling. The actual teaching and learning environment needs to be flexible to the students' time and needs, to families' time and needs. We don't need to necessarily go to a university-type flexible scheduling, but we do need to offer up some different time slots, which would allow students to potentially work and help support their families, to take care of younger siblings. These are all things that our children are struggling with. And if we can't take care of those basic needs, then our students aren't really engaged in the learning. But what I'd like to spend the most time talking about is the virtual reality world. And it already exists. But we need to capitalize on the virtual reality world. The artificial intelligence, all of these things, it's already there. When you look at flight simulators, we have that technology. A lot of it is still two-dimensional on a screen, but we do have an immersive virtual reality world. What if we bring that to all content? I look at my 11 and 6-year-old in a virtual world, it's amazing. At 6 years old, my youngest is able to navigate within that world, and she's engaged, and even doing lessons on sight words and language arts and mathematics in the virtual world. Imagine if we were able to say to our students, let's not read the Gettysburg Address. Let's get into that environment. Let me stand there and watch Abraham Lincoln give that address. Be able to actively talk with other characters within that virtual reality world. Think about literature and the projects that students have in literature and being able to feel the theme and to understand the setting, and it removes the barrier of background knowledge or the inability to understand or envision because of experiences that they may not have had. These three things should become paramount in the teaching and learning environment for education. The core purpose as educators is to provide free, appropriate public education for all students. In my career, I've had the pleasure of working with students with a number of exceptionalities, focusing and supporting units of autism, trainably mentally handicapped, intellectual disabilities, emotional behavioral disabilities, varying exceptionalities, and even English language learner varying exceptionalities classes. And I've learned so much from these students. But what I've also learned is that we need to create a culture on every one of our campuses where the inclusion and the feeling of family permeates every part of these students' lives. I recall right after I left the high school I was principal at, it was the first time that 2 students with Down syndrome were named King and Queen of the Homecoming Court. And it was genuine because they were part of the fabric and family of that student body. What a great feeling. I've had an opportunity to conduct roundtables with not just families, but instructional staff, as well as paraprofessionals, to talk about what's going well, what needs to be corrected, and what resources are you lacking. And to further develop that, meet with staffing specialists to talk about what resources they need and to support schools in that capacity. Support facilitation models are vital to conduct IEPs in an appropriate fashion. Scheduling is important, and being cognizant of how you're scheduling is something that we've worked with our schools to maximize. I've also dealt with state complaints, and we've managed and navigated those waters both with the school as well as with the families. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure our students are receiving the best education possible. With regard to English language learners, I've had to make some tough decisions on programs and how we were actually conducting our educational services for our students. We need to understand that there's immersion, there is sheltered, there's dual language, and you need to look at your strengths of your staff as well as the needs of the students and create the best educational environment for those children. What have I learned? I've learned that there's a lot of folks that forget that the I in IEP stands for individual. There are no blanket plans out there. Every student deserves their own individual plan. I've learned that the modality of teaching English language learners is dependent upon their ability to be literate in their home language or not, because that's two different teaching styles. And I've learned that our students are a representation of society, and if nothing else, we need to leverage their strengths and utilize bilingual skills, right? We need to utilize where a student might struggle in one area but excel in another and capitalize on that to leverage the opportunities as a whole student. As a parent of students with 504s and EPs, I understand the needs. In assessing the needs and the direction of the School District of Osceola, one must begin with the superintendent search feedback that's already provided. Use that as a precursor for a much larger information gathering approach. It's imperative to speak with our board members to find out what's working well, what's keeping us up at night, causing stress, and what resources are we missing, lacking, or just insufficient. Once we have that information, we use that as a sensitive ear, and we take it out into the school community, and we meet with family and community and business partners, and we meet with the staff in our feeder patterns. We ask the same three questions. We triangulate those data points to find out what do we need to address immediately, what can we address by the end of the year, and what may systemically need to change for the future. But at the same time, recognize what is working well and making sure that the decisions that you make don't infringe upon the success of whatever those initiative or programs are. Then we need to take a look at a district level and review all of the program evaluations or return on investment analyses that have been conducted. Is what we're spending our money on what we continue to need to spend our money on? Or can we leverage those dollars, the human capital and the personnel and the dollars into a different direction? But that needs to be done in a collaborative working environment, and it needs to be done expeditiously. Time is of the essence. We need to monitor that what we're doing is being carried out with fidelity. And above all, we need to hold individuals and departments accountable for our expectations. Not always an easy thing to do. It can be done with dignity and compassion, but accountability is crucial to being honest about our future direction. We're dealing with students' lives. We're dealing with the revitalization and energizing of school communities. We want to create a viable workforce flow of our students into the community. We don't have time for hurt feelings. At the end of the day, you're not going to make almost 70,000 families, 60 school communities happy with every decision you make. You have to understand that if you're doing what we need to do in a collaborative environment, that's the best we can do. How far am I willing to go to support those initiatives? It's very simple. If I believe that it's ethically what we need to do to support our children, there is no limit. And I'll go until I don't have any push left, and then I'll probably go just a little bit more. You have my word on that.